ChatGPT is the most popular application to interact with large language models. It gives you access to GPT-5, agent mode, or deep research. You can even upload videos and photos and ask questions about those. But up until recently, there was no way to connect your own data, such as APIs or databases. With the all-new developer mode, you can now create your own custom connectors, which allows you to bring in any data source using MCP. That also means you can connect to any of the available MCP servers that are available on the internet. The only thing you need is a remote MCP server endpoint. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can connect to MCP servers in ChatGPT, but also how you can set up a local bridge between your local machine, where the MCP server might be running, and ChatGPT running in the browser. That way you can even connect to local running MCP servers. So let's dive into VS Code to look at an example. In VS Code, I've set up a new project, which I called MCP Local Tunnel. If we look what's in the project, it isn't much. It's a package.json file, installed the Model Context Protocol SDK for TypeScript. Then I'm using Express because I want to make this MCP server available as an API endpoint. And then there are some developer dependencies that help me to compile the code. If I go to index.ts, you can see a lot of code in here. So most of the code actually I took from the Model Context Protocol TypeScript SDK. On the GitHub page for this SDK, you can find a lot of information on what it is doing. Most of all, what I took from here is the streamable HTTP example. So this example shows you how to set up your own endpoint that is using the streamable HTTP transport mechanism for MCP. So in my VS Code example, you see I have most of the code in there. I'm not going to go into very much detail on what this code is doing, but most of all, it's setting up an MCP endpoint. It is adding a session ID, so you can actually work with it through multiple chat interfaces. It sets up some session IDs and all those kind of things. If we scroll in a little bit, you can see my MCP server name. I can actually put a name in here, BMI MCP server, because what my MCP server is supposed to be doing is calculating your BMI. So you can see I'm registering a tool. It's called BMI calculator. It has a small description, calculate body mass index, and then it has two inputs. It's my weight in kilograms, and then it's my height in meters. But it's a very simple tool in here. If we scroll down a little bit, you can see finally it is adding this as an API endpoint to a specific port. So I can actually run this code by running npm run serve. And what this does, it is setting up my MCP server to run on localhost /3000. Actually, it's running on localhost 3000 /MCP. Let me add this and just restart it. So here's where my MCP server is available on locally. But I don't want to make it available just locally, I want to make it available everywhere. So that way I can import it in tools like ChatGPT, but also other tools that allow me to connect to remote MCP servers. For that, I'm going to use another package, and this package is called localtunnel. Localtunnel is an open source library which I've been using for years and years. It allows you to port on your machines like port 8000 or in our case 3000 to a remote endpoint. And that way you get an HTTPS endpoint that you can plug in everywhere. So back in VS Code, I still have my MCP server running on port 3000. I'm opening another terminal tab, and in here I'm going to run the command npx localtunnel for port 3000. So what this will do, it create a remote HTTPS endpoint, which you can see here. And this is forwarding to my port 3000. So I don't need to include the port anymore. I do need to include /MCP. So I now have my local MCP server available on a remote endpoint. And now I can go to ChatGPT and start importing it as a custom connector. So in ChatGPT, I can see my chat interface. I'm going to go to settings. In settings, there is something called connectors. And connectors are either pre-configured connectors, for example, to GitHub or Google Calendar. But if you're enabling developer mode, you can also add your own connectors. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to add my own connector. First, I'm enabling developer mode, which as you can see is in beta, so use at your own risk. And I'm going to click on back. And now I can create a new connection. So I can create a connection to my BMI MCP server. I can give a description for the MCP server, but it should be able to pull the description from my remote endpoint. I'm going to include my endpoint, which is the local tunnel remote endpoint slash MCP. I don't have any authentication enabled, but in an upcoming video, I'll make sure to enable authentication. And I'm going to press I trust this application, because if it's not trusted, you won't be able to use it. In theory, this means if someone gives you a remote endpoint and you plug it into ChatGPT, they can use a tunnel-like approach to access your local file system. So you don't want to do all those things, but we built the server ourselves, so I guess it's good. I'm going to press create, and after that I can verify the details for my connected MCP server. At the top of this page, you can now see BMI MCP server. You can see when I connected to it, you can see the URL, you can see if it passed the safety scan, and then you can see the tools that are available. They call these tools actions over here, similarly as how they call MCP servers connectors. And you can actually toggle on and off different tools. So let's assume you have a lot of tools for your server, you can toggle some of those. I'm going to close this, and now instead of starting a normal chat, I'm going to press this plus icon, and I'm going to start a developer mode chat. And starting a developer mode chat allows me to connect to my custom connectors. If I click add sources, you can see I can connect to my BMI MCP server, or I could even go to the flow and include more MCP servers later on. I can now ask a question, so calculate my BMI. I am 78 kilograms and 1.85 meters. So that will be about 180 pounds and 6 feet. If I press enter, it's going to start to calculate my BMI. So when we run this tool, sometimes it's going to use a large language model available to this chat. So GPT-5 has an auto model mode, but it's probably using GPT-5 for a lot of things. But in this case, I don't want to use GPT-5 because what I want to use instead is my tool. So I'm just going to say use tools. And then it should look at my connectors, the BMI MCP server in this case, and it can find one of those MCP server tools. So my calculate BMI tool, which is the tool I have locally running on my machine, with the inputs 78 kilograms and 1.85 meters high. And then I'm going to confirm it can take this action. What it's going to do, it's going to call the remote MCP endpoint, which is basically my local tunnel, which is executing the code on my local machine. And then I should be getting the answer in here. My BMI is 22.8. So luckily this is in the normal wave range, so it would be good. If I want to add more tools to my MCP server, for example, I can go back to VS Code and add more of those MCP tools. In VS Code, for example, I still have my code running. I can find my tool right here. And I can add more tools actually. I can even add tools that are related to API endpoints, but let's just make it easy, and I have calculate BMI 2. If I save this, I need to do a couple of things. I need to stop my MCP server from running and restart it. I don't need to restart my local tunnel. It should still be available, but it's always good to double check. And I can now go to ChatGPT and I should be able to see my new MCP tool being available there as well. I still have my chat open here in ChatGPT 5. Let me press connect more. This allows you to connect another tool, which is nothing I want to do. I want to go back to settings and connectors, and I want to quickly see if my new tool is available here as well. I probably need to press refresh, and that way it's going to look at the latest tools, and we should be seeing a second BMI tool in here. And as you can see, it's actually in there, and we will be able to toggle some of these on and off. You can also see it saying these are right tools. Probably we didn't set the correct metadata in our MCP server. So when you do, make sure to set the correct metadata before sharing these MCP servers with any of your colleagues. And this will work for any MCP server that has a remote endpoint, but as you saw, it's really easy to set up a local tunnel using the local tunnel library from GitHub. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe to my channel. I post more videos about building cool things with MCP. Also, don't forget to leave a comment and a like on this video.